any tips for brands trying to grow their wholesale business? Any suggestions you have for them to work with wholesalers, work with dispensaries?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
Come in and learn it, bring a lead brand, and don't try to win in every segment.
So hey guys, welcome to Wine, Whiskey and Weed Show. I'm here with Meagen Anderson. She's the director of wholesale for one of the, I think leading companies in Michigan, who's developing retail and dispensaries. And we'll just learn more about wholesale development, and which is really making sure that your products are depleting. You are onboarding your dispensaries well, and then we'll just have Meagen introduce herself. Meagen, thanks for coming to the show. Why don't you just give us a little bit of introduction to our audience as well on what your role is and about the company as well, please.
Sure. Thank you, Sid. My name is Meagen Anderson. I am the director of wholesale at Highway Horticulture. We're based out of Marshall, Michigan. We're a vertically integrated cannabis cultivator, processor, wholesaler, and we do have a small retail footprint in Cassopolis, Michigan. So my role primarily involves developing our retail relationships and bringing winning cannabis brands and developing our own cannabis brands for the Michigan market, and then growing the category within those retail partnerships, and also educating and advocating for cannabis.
Got it. So if I had to, really put a KPIs around your role, right, just to understand black and white, which are the 5 things that you are being measured on or you have to do, what are those? Could you just walk us over your KPIs?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're highly focused on establishing our brand targets. So that would include your retail number of dispensaries we're looking to penetrate with our brands, which has a lot to do with how we segment our account base. So we're segmenting in that way. So I'm hitting those retail distribution points and revenue. So I'm responsible for revenue. As we know, it's a highly sensitive and volatile market in Michigan. So there's a lot of work that's done to maintain those revenue targets and markups. I'm also responsible for the brand growth. So that's not only recruiting the brand and making sure that partnership is structured to lead to a number 1 to number 3 position in the Michigan market. So I'm doing quite a bit of work on the field side, so merchandising and field marketing activity. I also oversee that for our partnerships, just to make sure that we're seeing getting those distribution points and then making them sticky for our partners.
Understood. So how is your team structured? Like, you have a sales manager and sales team, or you are sort of the sales manager as well? And well, what, just give me a little bit of dynamics of your team.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're pretty flat right now because we're new. We just started selling product with one of our partners. It is a tablet company called 1906. They're a plant-based experience company. So we just went to market with them, and I had the pleasure of meeting and working with the lovely Jim Belushi. And we have his branded market, and our trade samples will be ready to go out next week. And we're hosting a large concert and cannabis festival in Niles, Michigan on August 20th. So my team is structured around right now myself and one brand manager, but the genesis of that really goes back to what we just talked about. So as the brands come online and the retail footprint grows, we'll be right behind that, expanding the team appropriately for that coverage. Some of my brand partners bring their own sales and marketing team to complement ours, which is a great help to the business as well.
Got it. So when you say, you have a portfolio of some other third-party brands, obviously that means that unit is for just the wholesale, so you have your own things, and then you have other brands that you work for retail distribution as well, right?
That's correct.
Is there, I'm just trying to get context from the wine and beer industry. Like, there is a, for a wine wholesaler or a beer wholesaler, there is a whole portfolio sort of a management, right? So you have some door openers, like you have some big names that will just open some accounts for you. You have a profit contributor, whereas you're building. So are there any portfolio pieces that you're trying to work to building your portfolio as a wholesale company?
Well, I'm so glad you asked that, because beverage happens to be one area that we have put up quite a bit of CapEx behind, and we believe in it. So most of my current agreements I'm not able to discuss yet because we're still under NDA. Like I said, we're very new. But you will see a award-winning portfolio of brands from us in the context that we want to make great products for great partners and help grow them. Many of those will be crossovers from alcohol beverage, so which is really exciting and interesting. And then we're going to make our own as well when those opportunities arise and there's a need that we can meet. And when it
and
makes
are there
sense.
some like contextual? I mean, there are strategical decisions that you've made because you want to play on the Miller or Bud network or something, or whatever the strengths are. Are you really thinking about the current distribution setup and then deciding your product?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you asked that. It's a little too complex to think that far ahead in the cannabis game, especially in Michigan, mostly because we are separated from transport. So in Michigan, you actually aren't the last mile. There's a secure transport company that has to take it from your location and deliver it. And there's
I did not know that. So you cannot own a truck yourself as a wholesaler?
That is correct. We cannot.
Wow. Okay. So even if, let's say, Burke Beverage had to distribute, they cannot. They have to set up a different company with a whatever different licenses.
They're not even allowed to have any ownership of it. It has to be a completely separate organization. Yeah. So it's a very, in that regard, if I brought one of my guys up from Andrews Distributing, to come in and hang out, or GLI, they would flip on their heads. They'd be like, how do you possibly do this? How do you take another company that's independent of yours and make logistics work in an industry where it's already expensive to drive around and deliver anything, and there's a lot of compliance challenges. So in Michigan, the retail network, and rightfully so, can return a product back to the processor for really any reason. So with all the changing rules all the time, one dispensary.
So even if the product is not moving, let's say after 30 days, dispensary can say, "Hey, pick this up back," and legally you have to pick it up.
That's correct. Yes.
Wow. All right. What about the terms? Let's go on some details which people don't know in the wine and beer space. Let's say I don't know, like in alcohol in New Jersey, and all states are different, right? So for example, in New Jersey, if a retailer doesn't pay in 30 days, you can put them on a red notice and then they have to buy on COD, right? So are there any laws protecting wholesalers here? Some states?
For cannabis, not that I'm aware of. It's actually, it's very interesting that you say that. What we've found is there's been so much, you see a lot of innovation in this space. Let me say that. I would say anything, I came in from alcohol beverage, from an established organization, from Boston Beer. And I really quickly was advised and took the advice to forget you were an alc bev for a minute, because just to get to the shelf, it's so challenging, right? And then when I started inquiring about payment terms, right, I'm like, in alcohol beverage, I'm pretty sure in most states it's like COD, right? You pay and then you take
especially beer was COD. Yeah, I know.
Now, when I went, the interesting thing about alc bev though is when you go upstream, and I started working in the hops industry, it's not like that. Everybody makes the product without actually paying for a lot of the ingredients for like many, many days. And it got very volatile in the hops industry, if you recall, in 2017, 2018, because of that. I mean, basically, you had an explosion of growth in the industry. A lot of people started planting more hops. You can translate a lot of this to cannabis. Supply began to exceed demand. You had cultivars and farms that weren't necessarily producing to GMP standards because hops didn't require that. And I see a lot of that translate into cannabis, right? There's so much supply. There's not a lot of GMP. I've been,
So as a wholesaler, let's say, right, you're building your book, for example. I don't know if that's how it works, but what advice would you give brand owners when they're having a meeting with you? And because they're also looking for wholesalers, right? I'm sure you must be approached by some brands that, hey, would you represent my product and so on, right? What are the tips that you may have for brand owners that here's what I would want as a wholesaler? Like, this is what I want in your deck, to be, instead of your romantic story, for example.
Yes, yeah, exactly. The brand story is important, but in this business, I always advise brands before we talk, like, to come with your unit economics. I want to see what it costs to actually produce your product, because
why do you want to see that, for example, if you know already your cost and your dispensary cost would be enough for you, right?
Well, it doesn't really work like that. So I have to be able to produce the product first. It really works backwards off what you can achieve at retail price. And because retail price compression is occurring as we speak. We anticipate another 33% in decline in pricing in Michigan.
Oh.
I mean, it's severe, right? There may be retailers that can't actually even withstand. There will be a lot of consolidation.
So you prefer transparency of their cost of goods, what markups they are working on, and so on.
Because we're on the processing side and we're producing the product. Absolutely. You have to have that aspect first. Now on the wholesale side, it's about with the stickiness of the brand. So do you want to add overlay? I would advise that you do if you want to grow a brand in a
what does that mean? What is an overlay?
Having your own field sales and marketing team that can complement our team. That was like alcohol beverage, right? At Boston Beer, we were integrated into the distributor. And even though we couldn't key the orders, we were out selling.
So you would like a supplier who tells you that, hey, I'll help you with one rep in the market, right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And then expenses to get your brand off the ground. You'd be surprised, or maybe not, of how many brands I talk to that don't have a market activation budget. So being prepared to go to market, what does your bud tender experience look like? Are you giving trade samples to your bud tenders? Some brands still don't do that because it's expensive and you're giving product away for free, so there's a lot of those components of growth. However, I would say that because of the nature of where we're operating and the capital investments that we made, I talk to mostly mature brands that already know this. So I would say for those folks, I say, help us with your key learnings from other markets. Every cannabis market is different, but there's some crossover. Tell us about who your customers are. Tell us about what your launch went like the last time you did it. What did you learn? Because you're always going to learn something. And we work together to create a launch sequencing process that allows that brand to get into market. Because we'll take cannabis beverage, for example, as a wholesaler. It can take months to get into market. And that is because you have a lot of compliance. You have to pass state shelf stability testing in Michigan in order to even get your product approved. And there's quite a few brands that haven't been able to achieve that because a lot of the processing facilities lack the GMP practices to keep these products stable. And so there's that aspect of it, and it's costly. So even to get into market, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars per SKU.
Do you do like contracts like alcohol bev on performance, like where brands can take back, their brand, and give it to some other wholesalers? Are wholesalers protected? Like how, in some states in our alcohol, they are franchise states and non-franchise, just trying to understand.
Not that mature yet. There are individual contracts that you as a business are engaging with in another business.
Understood. And back on, the market kickoff and those kind of things, just, to understand your language as a wholesaler for brands, break that down. Like what does that market kickoff look like, and what is a good execution in the first, let's say, 2 weeks to roll out a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll use a real example of a partner we're working with right now with 1906. So they are a fast acting tablet. They were originally created as a chocolate around the experience of love. And having love in your heart and love, with others and or with yourself, however you want. And then they looked at the numbers and they looked at the edible market for chocolate. And then they looked at the number that 8 billion prescriptions were written in the US the prior year for pills, for tablets. People prefer to take their experiences in that way. So first of all, you had a brand partner that understood the form factor they should be in to dominate in the market and to become number 1 to number 3. So you want to understand your brand strategy to get there. Everyone's brand is going to be a little different in how they get there. But with these guys, their process is all around engaging the bud tender, getting the bud tender to sell that experience, to know, because it's not a high dose product. They're between 2.5 milligrams and 5 milligrams of THC and CBD per serving with other plant medicine. That's a different sale than a legacy product with 100 milligrams of THC in a gummy, right? So I think it's really about where you play in your own segment. So for me, getting into the bud tender, doing an education, which is sampling them, going in and doing a staff education that 1906 has written a strong playbook for this. Then they have merchandising. So they actually do come in and work directly with the retailer to make sure we have that visible shelf space, and again, it's not live product. So you can be very creative in that way. And you can draw an opportunity in a retail environment or even in an online menu, right? To have an experience, to educate, to engage. And what I also liked that I would just say, and this might just be my own personal anecdote, I'll have to look at the data in a year and tell you if this was the reason, but they started with a sample size, a trial experience, if you will, and then went to their next upgrade. So it was a very, in my opinion, very retailer friendly, dispensary friendly. So look at all the value you're getting.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking you to cut me these giant checks when I don't know you. I don't know
that's a good point I think you make, because ultimately, in alcohol bev, we've learned that put the liquid in the mouth as much as you can, right? Like just first month, put it, just let people just taste it, let it go out, count the mouths basically, right? So I think that's a good way to start small, so dispensaries can write a small check and then try you out. Then that's a good point there. What have you seen? I've been hearing this, that engaging bud tender is the best. Everyone's just understand that is the game actually, because influencing the influencer, right? Like, what are some things that you've seen, like apart from the basics I've heard, like which is giving samples for them to try at home or whatever it is, right? But what are some other things on how people can engage and convince a bartender to sort of believe in your product?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's not just about
bartender. I just said bartender.
Yeah, no, I heard you, and I was going to say, but I wasn't going to correct you because I do it all the time. It's an alc bev thing. We're gonna, it's one of those things, and hopefully this is the future of the bar. Yeah. My dream is that someday we can go into a regular bar and enjoy a cannabis beverage. I've been actually alcohol free almost 1,000 days, so that would be wonderful for me. So yeah, education is obviously at the core of my strategy because it's beyond just brand education. What I've learned from my experiences in my previous career was that it's about the entire base of knowledge. Becoming a certified Cicerone, for example, was really important to me, actually being able to be good at my job as a salesperson. So that translates to all areas of service. So by giving a bud tender access to a program that has like free industry education, free trade education, free resources.
Got it.
So there are tools, like we use a partner called Sid Talent. I think that I'd love to talk about them because I think they're ahead of their years, in terms of the industry and with the amount of information that they provide. And then you can incentivize that learning. Here's the thing, you and I both know you can put as much product in the mouth that you want, but if you don't engage the person, it's really on them to want to desire more and be good at their job. And that's on those retail companies to build an environment that supports education and growth. So I think it's a two-way street. This entire thing for me has been built on the back of collaborations because it's an expensive industry to participate in. So you can't build it all yourself. You have to go find partners. And we've done that really successfully because a lot of us bring different industry expertise and relationships to the table that are all sort of in the ecosystem of cannabis. So that plays really well. So for us, it's broader education, incentivizing and rewarding for that education. How about some free tickets to our cannabis festival? And then having those in-person events too. So we did have a private event with Jim Belushi, maybe 150 people, key retailers, and they just came in and heard him sing and tell some stories and talk about why he wants to sell. And I can remember how impactful that was for me with the brand, with talking about Jim Cook from Boston Beer, for example. That is powerful. And I see that that's also something I recommend for brands is if your brand story is part of the human, put that human in the market, have them go talk to and engage people, because that relationship then for those bud tenders that are seeking either those experiences or to elevate their career will just continue to allow brands to have the opportunity to grow and be sticky because more consumers will get them in their hands, to your point.
That's true. I think you're trying to raise their bar as well. You're trying to empower them. You're trying to help them in their skills and all that stuff. I think one of the things which I really wanted to ask you was also some objections, right? Let's just play here where I'll ask you some objections and how you handle or you would train your sales staff, right? So first one is let's have this rapid quick round where I would say I'm a dispensary and you're trying to sell me, and I say I think we don't have enough space. So Meagen, over to you. What's your go to that?
Well, I would say, hey Sid, that's totally understandable. It's a really crowded category right now. Talk to me about how you prioritize your space. How do you decide what you're going to put in a particular space and why? Tell me your strategy.
Good point. Yeah, we just go by data. I mean, this kind of brownie sells and this category is not selling. So that's as per some data companies telling me that, right? So we just allocate our entire shelves as per the data.
Yeah. So let's take a look at what's not working for you right now, or what is, and extrapolate that. So you could give me some examples then of a top performing brand and what have they done for you, and what's in here right now that you wish it wasn't. And let's try to find a solution that brings these top performing aspects into something lower. And I would love to show you some data of some opportunities in the category right now that are experiencing high growth that I haven't seen on your shelf, but is working really well in this region. Would that be of interest to you?
Nice, Meagen. Nice. Yes, for sure. What about, let's say, another thing which I think would be coming was the price, right? Like I think we have I think you guys are expensive than your competitor. How do you normally go about that?
So much like AlkBev, then it goes back to how do you justify? What are those proof points for your price? So if you're a premium product, it's typically because you're not just straight THC. There's probably some other element of experience built into that, or a premium ingredient. So you really are justifying your pricing. Again, it's very transparent and very basic in the industry.
So it's like you focus on the quality and differentiate on the product itself, right? Like just
the product and the brand and the support also, like the relationship that you have. You know, hey, this is a premium product.
Like you know how we say, I'll deliver you a bottle as well if you run out of a wine, you know? So
exactly,
you can we're here. What other objections are you seeing, like mainly from dispensaries? You know, I'm sure like there must be more to it, right? So just give us 3 or 4 more great ones and then an answer for that as well, please.
Yeah, well, one of them right now is like too many of a certain category. Certain categories are very over skewed. You might have like cannabis flower or vape carts. So I'm being told like, oh, if you were bringing me that, I would say,
don't come. Yeah,
get out of here. And I obviously do have those products. So what I would say to them then is, well, let's have a look at what's not working and figure out why. And within cannabis, just like beer, wine, and spirits, there are small indicators at the product level that are discriminating of why a customer is buying something. Let's figure out why they're buying that. Are they not buying the cheap vape carts here? Because let's look at those products. Well, those are used with the least quality or commodity, let's say, distillate, versus this product, which is made using supercritical CO2 extraction, solventless extraction. It's true to plant. You're having reinfused terpenes. You're going to have a cleaner, longer high, a quicker high, meaning the product's going to last longer. So even though it's a $60 vape pen, you're going to get 3 times the life of a $20 vape pen, and it's going to have a similar. Wouldn't it be nice if your $300 bottle of wine you could save it and have a little bit every day for 30 days and it still tasted just as good with no oxidation, right? You'll see similar opportunities to educate in that realm as well.
What other like things like, what are your payment terms or all that also is a part of the equation, or it's not competitive yet?
You would be some of it's just like, are you sure you're going to have enough supply? Know, like things like that, because it really is so volatile.
Are there contracts between, like, if you don't fulfill supplies, you get penalties and all
that? From a retail relationship?
From the retail? Like, do dispensaries, can they legally or whatever way, they harm, like there is a penalty, like I ordered and you did not deliver?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet, no. And unfortunately for brands, there's risk there. I would advise another brands also do due diligence before you enter a new state. Interview. You need to understand the inside of these facilities and how they're producing product and that they're doing it at a high quality level. This is CPG. This is food grade and pharmaceutical grade manufacturing. And you look at that even on the beverage side, Sid, these are non-alcoholic products. Things can grow in them that can make people ill.
Well, yeah.
It's like, and when pasteurization isn't part of the requirements of GMP, anybody can make a beverage. So I'm looking at things like that also when I'm looking at brands, how they're made, how are they processed, because just like we found clean label was important in alcohol and we wanted transparent labeling, will be there, eventually in cannabis as well.
Good point. I think anything else, Meagen, you would want any tips for, brands trying to grow their wholesale business? Any suggestions you have for them to, work with wholesalers, work with dispensaries?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that be flexible, come in and learn it, bring a lead brand and don't try to win in every segment. If you can bring a strong product in one segment and win in that space, then you can expand, because the risk is very high to do it other ways. And I think there's a lot of examples of how that has deterred brands from growing at the rate they probably should have, especially we're on track to do 2 billion in Michigan plus this year. We did 167 million in sales last month, our second highest sales month ever as a state for cannabis.
Wow.
And the beverage category hasn't even started yet. So we have a lot of upside here. I hope that we're able to see you in Michigan and host you at some point, Sid, and take you around for an experience, because I think as you see the beverage category turn online and the consumption centers where you can actually now consume some of these products on site as well as events, will be an opportunity to do that. I would also say that we saw last weekend in Michigan the very first event that had alcohol and cannabis consumption in the same event.
Nice.
They weren't able to intermingle, of course, but they
different
were there.
rooms.
So it's like different rooms. So what is the future of events now, and how do cannabis plays a role as of that form what form factors, I think is so fascinating and very exciting for everyone.
Yeah. I think this category looks promising for sure. I mean, because I think we all agree that this is sort of a category which can bring the social element and the scale element. And it's just matter of this bottlenecks, which are their regulatory useless bottlenecks in some places, right?
Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, you got to think, I think about it like this is like the end of prohibition. I mean, the laws are not that great when prohibition ended,
it's just that because it's now, alcohol companies are trying to protect a few things, and obviously the licenses and just, all that stuff. But great, Meagen. I think we're pretty much done here, but appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
I think I agree with the fact that, you say that having one product and building, like how in our wine business, or liquor business, it's like reputation. You want retailer to know that your product moves, right? You want them to know that you are the one you can trust, and then bring me the other one, right? So
yes, thank you for saying that. I'm glad you're reinforcing that idea and grow and helping your listeners and the industry grow in that regard, because I'm 100% in agreement with you, and I think that there's a bright future ahead.
Super. So see you soon. I think you're not coming to SF, right? It's just Chicago.
Not SF. I'll see you in Chicago. Yeah, I'll see you then. I look forward to it.
See you then, Meagen. Thank you for your time.
Cheers. Yep. Bye.